My husband signed the divorce papers in the hospital waiting room the moment the doctor explained I would never walk again. He has no idea that locked in a vault on the other side of town, there are documents that will make me heir to $100 million when I turn 35. Before we move on, drop a comment telling us which city you're watching this from. And go ahead and hit subscribe and ring the bell so YouTube knows this content matters and shares it with more people. Until the accident, my routine was clockwork. I got up at 5, packed Jason's lunch, fired up the bakery oven, and filled the display case with cinnamon rolls. Customers loved the smell, sipped coffee, and saw Jason outside, always in crisp shirts with a toothpaste commercial smile, waving like the ideal husband. Inside our apartment, the picture had faded. He hadn't held a job in 2 years. He blamed the economy, said the openings were too small for his talent, or promised a shining position right around the corner. I pretended not to care until the nights grew too long and the silence too heavy. On the wet curve that changed everything, my first thought was of the rolls I wouldn't bake in the morning. Jason thought about bills. In the ER, he whispered he needed to restart life far from dead weight. Dead weight in this case was me. He left without looking back. I, stuck in the bed, took a deep breath. He still doesn't know about the fortune waiting for my birthday, and every heartbeat reminds me that from here on out, the story belongs only to me. Rain streaked the glass while Grace at the window watched the stream of headlights. Jason walked into the kitchen, phone in hand, eyes half closed. "Morning," she said, setting down her mug. He grumbled, "Of course you're already up." She kept her voice steady. "We deliver Mrs. Wilson's order today. I need help at the bakery after lunch. Kevin wants to talk business. Count me out." Jason cut her off without looking up. Later, Grace was driving back from the store, humming and thinking about the batches. A truck skidded on the wet road. Crash, darkness, bright lights, the smell of disinfectant, machines beeping. A heavy body, distant legs. The nurse leaned over. "Grace, can you hear me?" She tried to move her feet. Nothing. "Where's my husband?" "In the hall," she said, leaving. Jason came in, pale, phone still clutched in his fingers. "You scared me," he muttered. "What happened?" Grace groaned. "Serious crash, your spine was hit. The doctors don't know if you'll walk again." Her hands shook. "I can't feel my legs." He reached out but stopped, cold fingers hanging. Grace fought the fear. "We'll get through this together." Jason nodded, eyes already back on the screen. The days after the crash blurred into pain, PT, and paperwork. With the bakery closed, Grace saw dust in the ovens while the bills piled up. Insurance barely covered bandages, let alone rent. Jason, once her refuge, started sleeping on the couch, saying her spasms woke him, and every late arrival came with a new excuse. One night, Grace stared at the ceiling when she smelled the pricey cologne that came through the door. "You're late," she murmured. "I was out with Kevin. Might land a job," he said, dropping the keys. She reached out a hand. "I miss us." Jason exhaled. "I'm exhausted, Grace. Every night turns into this." Her voice cracked. "I need you." "It's too heavy for both of us," he shot back, turning away. Anger and fear thickened the air. A week later, Lauren came in with grocery bags. She hugged Grace carefully. "You've lost weight. Are you eating?" "Almost nothing," she admitted. Lauren put the food away, sat and held her hand. "And Jason?" "Distant. I'm scared." "You always find a way," the friend said. Before we go on, hit subscribe and ring the bell so YouTube knows this content matters and shows it to more people. The turning doorknob broke the moment. Jason stopped, surprised. "Didn't know we had company." "Just keeping her company," Lauren answered. His gaze lingered on Lauren a second too long. A chill ran through Grace, colder than the pain, and she wondered when love had slipped through their fingers. Without noticing, the weeks slid by. To feel she still mattered, Grace mixed flour, sugar, and sheer will. She baked cookies and sold them online. Jason, though, shrank into bad moods. He dodged money talk, snapped back, and got home late. One early morning, when sleep wouldn't come, Grace caught soft footsteps in the hallway. She rolled her chair to the cracked door. The voices were hushed. "Is she asleep?" Lauren whispered. "I can't take this anymore, Lauren." "She's not the woman I married," Jason muttered. Grace's chest tightened. She stepped back without a sound, her heart pounding in her ears. The next morning, Jason was acting like everything was normal. Before he could leave, she stopped him. "Can we talk?" "What is it now?" he snapped, pulling on his coat. "Are you seeing someone else?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jason didn't answer. He grabbed his keys. Grace pressed on. "I need to hear it from you." He turned, stone cold. "Take care of yourself, Grace. I'm done." The door closed like a verdict. With no strength in her legs, she stood in the middle of the hallway, hearing loneliness echo around her. Lauren had vanished too. In seconds, she'd lost the two people who'd tied her to the world before the accident. Still shaking, she called her mom in another state. The voice on the other end tried to pull her back. "Fight, honey. Don't let this destroy you." But Grace barely listened. Days drifted by, staring at the ceiling. Nights in tears that felt endless. One morning, Grace found an envelope from a law firm in the mailbox. The paper felt heavier than all the overdue bills. She tore it open. "Mrs. Grace Bennett, we regret to inform you of the passing of Charles Bennett. According to his will, you have been named a beneficiary." Charles was almost a stranger, frozen in old photos. She crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. Hours later, the apartment's silence made the paper rustle in her memory. Grace dug the letter out, smoothed it, and left it on the counter. The next morning brought 3 sharp knocks. The landlord. "The rent's still late, Grace." "I need more time, Mr. Foster." He gave her 7 days, but his look said the clock was ticking. With the door closed, the letter seemed to breathe. Grace thought about what was left. The wheelchair, the bills, the bakery, a car had turned into a memory. She picked up the phone. "Bennett and Associates, good evening. This is Grace Bennett. I got a letter about my uncle's will." Polite surprise on the line. "Miss Bennett, wonderful. Can you come in this week?" "My mobility's limited," she said. "We'll handle transportation," the receptionist promised. When she hung up, fear and hope tangled together. She spent the night replaying flour on her apron, Jason and Lauren's laughter, the promise not to quit. Maybe the will was just paperwork, maybe not. Either way, since the accident, it was the first time she'd wanted to see what lay around the next bend. Grace couldn't sleep. Jason's final words, Lauren's steady voice, and the lawyer's letter took turns in her mind while the phone stayed silent. At dawn, a black sedan pulled up. The driver, all brisk gestures, opened the door and settled Grace inside. The city blurred past. Every intersection carried her toward something she couldn't name. At the office, an assistant guided her into a conference room. A man in a gray suit entered with a thick folder. "Good morning, Mrs. Bennett. I'm Mr. Anderson," he said. "I'm sorry for your loss. Your Uncle Charles spoke highly of you." Grace barely remembered him but stayed quiet. Anderson opened the folder slowly. "Your uncle named you the sole beneficiary of his estate," he said. "Before we get to the conditions, you need to know the amount." "Beneficiary? Amount?" Grace swallowed hard. "How much are we talking about?" "A little over $100 million, Anderson replied. The silence that followed weighed on the room. Before she could react, the lawyer went on. "There's a confidentiality clause. Nothing can be revealed for 6 months. Part of the money is available now. The rest will be released later as long as the secret holds. Before we go on, click subscribe and hit the bell so YouTube knows this content is worth sharing." "Does anyone else know?" Grace murmured. "No one outside this room," Anderson said, closing the folder as the clock marked the start of an unexpected chapter in Grace's life. Grace rested her chin on her hand and stared at the empty street. Since she'd returned, she'd weighed every word from Jason and every silence from Lauren. Should she tell them the truth? Jason's harsh goodbye still rang in her ears. The sky was turning copper when her phone vibrated. Lauren had texted, I know this is tough. Need anything?" Grace stared at the screen. Was it real concern or just checking that she was still alone? She muted the chat. A thud at the door broke the stalemate. Jason walked in, jacket rumpled, carrying the smell of someone who hasn't slept right. "Can we talk?" he murmured. "About us. I messed up. I miss you." Grace's heart skipped a beat. "Why now?" "Lauren and I meant nothing," he said, looking away. "I thought you didn't need me anymore. I was wrong." The memory of Jason whispering with Lauren about leaving her burned like alcohol on a wound. "I want to fix everything. Let me come back," he insisted, kneeling beside the wheelchair. Grace clenched her fists. "You left me when I needed you most and you still cheated on me. Trust isn't patched up with apologies." He swallowed hard. "Please, Em." She blinked away the tears but shook her head. His expression turned cold. "Is there someone else? Is that why you keep me away?" The question knocked the air out of her lungs. "I've learned to live without you, Jason," Grace said firmly. He stood, veins throbbing. "You'll regret this. Don't come looking for me when you're in trouble." He left and the door rattled with the impact. Hours later, her phone lit up with a call from Lauren. Grace let it ring. There was no room left for half-truths. In the early hours, alone in a room that felt bigger than ever, she decided to keep the will to herself, not out of revenge, but to protect her sanity. The next morning, 3 cautious knocks echoed. Lauren appeared with 2 coffees and a bag of pastries, as if sugar could glue the broken pieces back together. "I know you're hurt," she said, sitting on the couch. "Can we talk?" Grace kept her eyes on the steaming cup. "Jason is wrecked," Lauren went on. "He's sorry. You should talk to him." "Did you love him?" Lauren swallowed. "I was an idiot. He says I pushed him away." "He said that," she admitted, lowering her gaze. "So he lied, and you covered for him." Silence. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "But I came for another reason. Are you okay financially? I heard you got something from the family." Grace's spine stiffened. "I have enough." Lauren's eyes glimmered with expectation. "If you ever need a partner, call me." Grace almost laughed. "I'll think about it," she replied, certain that invitation would never leave the page. Lauren left soon after, and the act of concern fell apart. In the days that followed, Grace quietly rebuilt her routine. A discreet advance on her inheritance covered the rent, stocked the pantry, and paid for a caregiver during the hard hours. One afternoon, Ethan, a childhood friend, showed up with flowers and a smile that brought back recess memories. "Look at you, Em, still fighting," he said, sitting beside her and pulling the first smile out of her in weeks. "I'm hanging in," she said. "If you need me, just call." For the first time, Grace felt she wasn't facing everything alone. Before we keep going, click subscribe and hit the bell. This tells YouTube the content's worth sharing with more people. The neighborhood soon whispered that she was still standing, even without a bakery or a husband. No one understood how she paid the bills. Jason and Lauren sniffed around. He texted, "Did you win the lottery? How are you funding this?" "I'm surviving," she answered. The reply came, "You owe me. Don't forget everything I did." Grace ignored it. Lauren sent a text about forgiveness. She read it, deleted it, and turned off her phone. She'd already spent too much time being useful to people who only saw profit. On a Saturday, Ethan invited her to Sunday dinner. Grace hesitated, self-conscious about the wheelchair, but he insisted. At his parents' house, she was met with warmth. His mother served extra pie and said, "Your family here." Grace laughed, told stories, and felt her voice return. On the way back, under the streetlights, Ethan whispered, "You're stronger than you think. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The tears that welled up weren't weakness. They proved she was no longer alone. Back in the apartment, Grace stared into the mirror and saw a changed version of herself. Lighter, paler, but with a determined spark in her eyes. She carried the marks of a broken love and of lies, but also the strength of someone who promises herself not to go back. She murmured, "I'm capable of more than this." That night, the pillow offered silence. Jason and Lauren stayed out of her dreams. Mornings stopped revolving around phone alerts. While the tea water boiled, she sketched a plan. Answer emails, sort the bills, list goals. The quiet transfer from the law office landed in her account, enough to cover rent, buy groceries, and breathe without fear. Discreetly, she paid off the landlord, thanked a distant relative for support, and opened the door to Ethan, who now showed up with warm bread or just conversation. "Ever thought about baking again?" he asked, noticing the flour on her fingers. "I think about it every day," she admitted, surprised at her own conviction. That week, an online shop for cookies and cakes was born. Every packaged order proved it was possible to start over with her own hands. On a rainy afternoon, the phone rang. It was Mr. Anderson. "Miss Bennett, are you doing well?" "I'm getting by," she replied. He reminded her that the rest of the inheritance would be available in 6 months, and suggested she use the advance not only for herself but for anyone in need, just as her uncle had wished. Grace stopped when she heard her uncle praise her kindness and say the gift should make the world a kinder place. She remembered single moms counting coins at the checkout. That same week, gift cards showed up anonymously on the doorsteps of struggling families. Every smile from afar reminded her that her pain now had a purpose. Ethan noticed the change and suggested one more step: build a simple website and offer deliveries. "I'll drive the van until you need 10 drivers," he joked. Orders soon doubled. The kitchen filled with the smell of sugar and bursts of laughter. Even though she couldn't stay on her feet for long, Grace conducted everything like a maestro. One night, as Ethan sealed the last package, he said, "I haven't seen you smile like this in a long time." She answered, "It feels good to create again." He added, "I'm proud of you, Em." She blushed but didn't look away. They ended up laughing, relieved. Outside, the new ramp, the parked van, and the steady buzz drew attention. Jason, unemployed and drowning in debt, heard rumors. Lauren let jealousy take over. Grace's phone rang more than once. On the third call, she picked up, her voice steady. "What do you want, Jason?" He tried to sound casual. "Just wanted to see how you're doing, and where all that money's coming from." The question hung in the air, heavy as a thundercloud. Jason knocked on the door at 10 p.m. "It's not fair that you're swimming in money while we're drowning," he blurted out. Grace kept her tone neutral. "You chose your path, Jason. This is mine." He tried to backpedal. "Maybe I can help. We could make a deal?" She ended the intercom call. The next day, near the end of the afternoon, Lauren showed up with deep circles under her eyes. "Grace, I know you're hurt, but Jason lost his job and rent's due tomorrow. Could you lend us something, just so we can breathe?" Grace took a deep breath. "When I needed help, you both turned your backs on me. I don't owe you anything." Lauren lowered her eyes, murmuring an apology that dissolved in the air. The door closed softly, sealing that chapter. Meanwhile, Ethan celebrated every milestone. The 100th order on the online store, a note from a single mom, the smile Grace let slip. "You're changing lives," he said, reminding her that her scars no longer ran the show. 6 months slid by, slow but steady. Grace kept the inheritance a secret, turning it into a badge of survival. On a clear-skied morning, the envelope from the law office confirmed. It was all hers. She let her eyes travel around the tiny apartment, the backdrop of her downfall and rebuilding, and in a flash she revisited Jason's betrayal, Lauren's lies, Ethan's loyalty, and her uncle's last gesture. It wasn't an ending, but a beginning. She was ready for the next act. The final notice email arrived before sunrise. Grace stared at the number, 100 million, until her heart found its rhythm again. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and let joy and responsibility settle in. Minutes later, Ethan walked in as usual, flowers in one hand, coffee in the other. She held up the document, her voice shaky. "It's official. It's all mine now." His grin spread wide. "I knew it. What's the first move?" Grace lifted her shoulders. "I'll reopen the bakery, bigger, full of light. Then I'll start a foundation for people fighting the way I did." That kicked off a marathon. Contractors took over a sunny building downtown, walls got warm colors, new ovens filled the back, and a sign went up on the front, "Sweet Restarts." The crew came with broken stories, people with disabilities, single moms, folks who just needed room to start over. Ethan trained the front of house, cracked jokes, and kept the pace with trays of coffee. Before we go on, hit subscribe and turn on the bell so YouTube knows this content matters and shares it with more people. On opening day, the line wrapped around the block. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla drifted down the street, pulling up childhood memories. Customers hugged Grace, snapped photos, and told her how much they'd missed the place. The press showed up, curious about the woman who had risen again. In front of the cameras, Grace spoke firmly. "I lost everything, but I came back with help. Now I'm passing that help on." The footage spread. Donations started trickling in, and stories of resilience flooded her inbox. While across town, Jason and Lauren heard about Grace's comeback at the exact moment they were trying to keep their own world from collapsing. It was mid-afternoon when Grace was reviewing aid applications for vulnerable families. A gentle knock broke the silence. When she looked up, she found Jason and Lauren worn down, carrying guilt on their shoulders. Jason tried a fragile smile. "Grace, we need to talk." She folded her hands on the table. Go ahead. Lauren, her voice cracked, stepped forward. We've lost everything. We were unfair. Can you forgive us and guide us on how to start over? Grace's stomach tightened. Memories throbbed but didn't show. You left me at my worst. Now you're back because I'm stable? Color flushed Jason's face. We were lost. You know what desperation feels like. Grace nodded. I do. I also know how much it hurts to be betrayed by the ones who should protect you. She kept her tone firm. I can forgive, but I won't be used. A tear slipped down Lauren's cheek. We're on the edge. Grace held their gaze. You have each other. I had no one when you left me. Jason's mask of remorse fell. Without that money, you'd be a failure. Grace squared her shoulders. Money didn't make me strong. It just revealed the strength you chose to ignore. With one motion, she hit the security button. You can leave. I hope you find peace, but not here. The door shut and the air felt lighter. As she cast out the past, Grace made room for something bigger, still unnamed. The afternoon warmed the bakery with laughter mingled with an old Sax's breath. Sitting by the display case, Grace soaked in the smell of fresh bread when Ethan walked over. He pulled up a stool, leaned in, and whispered, You handled all of it with rare grace. Grace exhaled, tired but steady. I don't want to carry resentment. I just want to move on. Ethan laced his fingers with hers, sealing a silent pact. Then let's go, he said simply, because you deserve what comes next. The news spread through the narrow streets and the community responded as one. In the mornings that followed, handwritten envelopes stacked up on the counter. Thank you notes appeared among impromptu bouquets and kids' crayon hearts. Grace answered every gesture, making room for another beginning, another rebirth. Cameras soon followed. In the interviews, she looked straight into the lens. You're stronger than you think. Pain doesn't get to decide who you'll be. As she spoke, trays slid in and out of the oven behind her, sending out warmth that drew in anyone looking for shelter and hope. The bakery turned into a meeting point for everyone in need of a second chapter. Between batches and stories, Ethan watched Grace discover something bigger than just resilience. It was life, freshly awake, pulsing, ready to surprise in the steps ahead. And that's it, folks. If this story touched you in any way, drop a like, share it with someone who could use a nudge of hope, and tell us in the comments which part hit you the most. That way we can spread this chain of courage and fresh starts even further. See you in the next chapter.